Welcome into Restore Yourself. We're going to start with centering our hips, spine, but most importantly, you want to get some props set up so that you can go into Supta Baddha Konasana, the reclining cobbler. So you can either have your bolster across the mat, okay, of course that's obvious, but you can also have it tipped up on some blankets. So if you start to come into the variation that I'm showing and you feel like, ooh, that's a lot of rib motion. Spend some energy feeling what else you're stretching besides your ribs. It's shoulders, it's everything, right? You're all connected. So when we start, we have our feet together in front of the bolster. We're sitting next to it. So my bolster's right up against me. I got my blocks and I'm going to place them under my thighs with my feet together, soles of the feet. That's important, not the soles of the feet down. You got to have them in foot prayer. Now, you could be in this pose without the belt. It is okay if you were to lie back and be here. Okay, and you might even try that and see, well, what's the benefit of the belt? I mean, why do we keep using this belt? So I got the belt in a big loop. I have it all connected, okay? And then I'm going to move it down over my head, drop it at the pelvis, scoop up my feet, and then it's going to kind of seal. It's right around the arch, right, of the feet. And I pull the belt, get the buckle near my hip so it's an easy reach that I can not only pull on it and tighten it, but if I need to get out, right? All right, so I tip the block so they contour my thighs, okay? And there's no guarantees the blocks will be perfect, but you have to kind of get your elbows back on the bolster, get your sandbag nearby, and you've got maybe a therapy ball with you too, maybe not. But as I reach my core back, I have this opportunity to get the ribs to motion outwards with the bolster like this. So I kind of find it fun to just push my elbows into the bolster and kind of wiggle my ribs and, kind of jazz it up a little bit, because you want the practice to feel like there's motion motion into the stillness. Get a sandbag, maybe, complete option. And then as your head lowers back on all these blankets, you might find you need more blankets than you're used to with reclining cobbler's pose, right? We usually have the bolster up on a ramp. So this way, well, we don't. So it can be particularly interesting. So if you need a little more height under your head, just be kind to your neck, and you can just fold the blanket one more time, scoot it underneath your head. But right at that shelf at the back of your skull is about where you want the blanket to start its support. Okay. Yeah, don't be tricked into that you need the blanket under your neck, right? If it's like I'm suffering, I need the blanket, well, then by all means you add it. But feel these spatial orientations from your feet together to getting those blocks in the right space. They don't have to be there. You could move them a little bit further out and see how that feels in your hips. You might be surprised. It might feel good. And some people go minus the block on the either leg. Now, sand, I'm going to pivot my sand from heart to belly, just because it feels like that's going to be where I want the sand today. And then as I stretch open the chest, the abdominals, they gradually elongate, right? That core sense connecting from my lower levers to my upper. It's all this middle stuff that's really interesting in a restorative practice. Relaxing your eyes. You could have an eye pillow on if you like. But even using the eyelids to close. And just sensing the reaction of your inhale, receiving the breath. And relaxing on your out breath. Now, since the bolsters, it's across the back versus lengthwise on the spine, you might find there's an attraction to moving the shoulders back differently. Kind of interesting. We usually have the bolster lengthwise, which you could still do for this opener. But when we have it where you can kind of pinch into it with your shoulder blade, And then just let the shoulders fall back to open. See what you can do by just using the props to support the body. The props are active and your body is the receiver of the practice. So let's field a few more rounds of breath. Should you keep the blocks where they're at? Sure, you could always slide them out. And if you decide that you want to wiggle your hips a little bit, that might be kind of satisfying. Just a little bit of movement. Kind of jostle into the tissues. Feel where the weight is if you're using a sandbag. Noticing the diaphragm in motion. The lift and lower. Arms could remain the same, and you could also reach them behind you. So if I motion the arms back, I might interlace my fingers at the roots and turn the hands inside out, extending. And notice if the extending feels like it's an arm extending, like armpit chest, or if it's the abdominals. Like, just think about the waist reaching. Maybe abdominal is too confusing of a term for this, but the center reaches. Okay. Relax your grip. Arms move down to move any sand off. And then as we shift the positioning of the leg parts, they still kind of feel that they're going to be in external rotation, but you're going to unbuckle and slide the belt. You could still leave it on the back. It doesn't need to be perfectly removed. It's just not going to be on the thighs. And then I'm going to reach to the blocks and then position my feet, soles of the feet on the ground, kind of wiggle my hips a little bit. But first things first, get a ball, okay? And place the right ankle up and over to the left knee. I find this interesting that if I have my bolster lengthwise, it's harder to do than this way. So when I have this support in my thoracic, right, so the mid vertebrae, we have this support with the bolster, not the ball. The ball is really up to the upper outer left thigh. It might be hard to get it up on the hip because you got this bolster so close to the hip. So I just place it to the upper outer thigh and I lean my knees to the left, and there is a block over there. So I'm going to see if I can rely on it a little bit. And if it seems like it doesn't allow you to get as much motion, then you just slide the block away or just kick it away. But hold the right knee with the left hand if possible, and let the right arm relax open. Okay, the arm could be outwards. The ribs are going to feel like they're trying to decide, should I go left or right, or should I just stay and receive this pull? So it's a pulling pattern in not only the front space, but what I find curious is the places that it's moving into the back space near the kidneys. So it's going to be a little bit of lower back, and you might be sensitive to this bolster. It might be okay. It might be something you decide to always remove it and still take all the poses. Take them all up. Okay. All right. But instead of, to go one at a time, right? It's not a drive-through yoga experience. It's slow. It's a slow movement. So feeling as the leg crosses over, I like this when I don't overdo the stretch because I know I'm going to get deep on the hip work. So just kind of get a little, marinate the hip a bit, and then come back in center, uncross, right foot down, left ankle to right knee. It's so simple, this one today. So ball to the upper outer right thigh or hip. Maybe the block is not something you're using, but tip the knees to the right now. Right hand holds the left knee. Left arm just opens. And, if you might even roll your head to the left and kind of feel that rotation, that movement through the ribs, you might decide, I don't want to use this bolster anymore. I'm going to do the same thing without it. You can have your head just on a blanket or two, but we'll find out. So as we lean into the leg position, crossing to the right, get a feel if your left foot is crossed over the right knee. So it's mostly the left ankle. My bottom foot, the right foot, is on its side, so it's sickled. Okay, and it's important that you're not peeling up too much of those lower parts. The left rear, yes, but you're not trying to do a pelvic tilt or a bridge pose. Okay, so take a few more breaths here, getting that lower line of the spine and into the hip warmed up. Breathing as part of the warm-up, slow. And noticing what maybe the depth is with the breath, or maybe it's surface, right? Focus with your breath, kind of skimming the surface of the skin. So we're in a practice of body awareness. So we want to feel the breath as a stretching tool. And now release the grip of the knee. Happy to say we're going to go into side sage now. So you're going to take the ball over to the left side if you're using it for this. And just feel as you uncross, if you want to uncross, you could roll to the left, uncross the left ankle. You're going to be stuck on a block probably. And as you roll, feel how you kind of go not all the way to the navel, right? We're not going all the way around, although the center area could circle, okay? It's kind of tricky to do that, but we'll try it later. So we'll bring the left thigh up to the bolster. You got your bolster, and if you have a round bolster, you can add that, right? Not that you're going to add the round bolster and a flat bolster. You have to choose between one or the other, not two bolsters stacked. But I've got my bolster center, and I'm going to get my sand and probably just leave my blankets as they are. I don't really have to move them around. You know what's kind of nice on this one is if you have the blankets, you might not even need a block overhead. You might just use the blanket for your hand. But on my left hip, I got my ball under my right inner leg or knee, okay? And I've got a sandbag, and I try to get that left thigh comfortably close, but just feeling that hinge for the left thigh into the knee. You can almost grasp a hold of the back of the knee and just kind of hook your fingers into the back of it and just bring it up towards the bolster, not on it, but next to it. And then we add that sand to the outer right, and it could be side of the hip, it could be torso. Okay, you could go up so. And if you do find that you can go higher and it feels kind of liberating for the tissues to stretch, especially if your back is a little tight, probably getting a feeling of moving that sand. I like the sand on the hip area. I like how that stretches my side. Some of us feel like sand should be on the side to stretch the side. Okay, but this should be traction for your hip. And as your right arm either goes overhead or it moves open, it doesn't have to find a stopping point, right? It could be in motion. Okay, sometimes we want to arrive. I suppose this one has a destination in the pose, doesn't it? But that left arm in between, right, that's in the gap between the bolster and the blanket. So if my left shoulder is kind of pinched by the bolster or the blanket, I want to feel that freely reaching between. Okay, and you might explore that part of it. If you never have, you just let your left arm or your lower arm just be. You never really think on it. You can kind of inch it a little bit out. You can bend the elbow, feel the rotation in the ribs. Yeah, even if you've lived in a sage pose before, you can always try some variations from time to time. But feeling that extension, feeling how you relax into the left side of the brain. Costal breathing, those muscles between the ribs. You want to feel those kind of fill up. And what they primarily fill up with is when you breathe. Of course, there's fluids moving through everything in the body, every area, okay? But you're going to be kind of pumping, right, with the in-breath. And then as you exhale, notice if there's any potential for the felt sense of length on the side. It might just be a thought. That's how it ends up, right? Oh, I thought I would feel that sensation, but perhaps you can detail it. And if your right arm is tired with the reach, you can let the arm rest down by the left arm or onto your side. Okay. A little longer. We're going to use this as a wave of expansion in the mid body. So then we twist, right? The vertebral column won't feel compressed or wedged or jammed up. So this is ideally going to give the spinal area just a little suggestion of extension, basically. Okay, not flexion. So extending through the spine. Take about 3 more breaths. Knowing you can always come out of the pose, you can always modify it. Okay, notice if there's the lift of the head is too much, right? If you feel like the blankets are too high, just notice how your neck can release. So you want the head to relax. So this neck area, when we come into the twist, is warmed up. Okay, now right arm lowers down to move the sand. Okay, we're going to do a brief twist. Okay, no sand required here. But when you turn to the left, where you're already going, you might try, I suppose you could put a sandbag on the left inner leg because it's easy to apply it. That's an idea. No ball under the knee. Likely your right thigh can rest on the left foot or it can rest to the left thigh. Okay, so we're going to turn the bolster up on top of the blankets. And if you're kind of fussy sleeping sage person, some of us like to have a blanket on top of this. So you can always grab your blanket and place it on your bolster under your head. But it'll be the same height, won't it? But there is something about the blanket that I like personally. But as you're turning, you don't have to have sand, but you could here on the left inner leg. But as you rotate, kind of feel how the length is from navel, even though the navel's probably not on the bolster today, unless you move it over. And as you reach through the chest, keep that extension through the ribs and the hands lower down. It will feel like pressure on your breathing state. And it's nice and calming for the heart. So as you turn your head to the right, unless you're feeling owl-like, you can always turn your head to the left, but likely that's a lot. Okay, but some people actually kind of need that kind of rotation to feel calm in the pose. So feeling where the heart kind of velcros to the bolster, right? If you can think of like an area that's, it's not that huge, fist size, but it's definitely a critical part of existence. So kind of feeling where the abdominals have that rotation connected to the mid vertebrae, and then from that rib kind of chamber, or maybe rib corral, right? It turns, it's like a barrel. And then as you let your head rotate, wow, what a spine, right? The spine has all these different movements right now from the base to the top. And just relax into it. Feel the breath in the back space. See if you can move the breath out of focus in the face, but in the body. So as you in-breath, maybe through the nose. Feeling that transfer of movement into the back. Just let the shoulders relax. Let them kind of melt and rest down. They may even need to go a little further out with the hands help, reaching. Elbows rest. Some of us pretty close to the bolster feels better. Just a couple more moments here. Now hands slide in under the shoulders. See if you can just, in almost a cautious way, not to tighten the back here. So when we push to come up, we're going to just pivot. So we're going to turn hands, knees, and then slide your bolster off the blankets. So it's, and if you got a round bolster, this one you might want to use a flat standard one. It's a little easier to balance. If you have a round bolster, you get extra credit. Okay. And the knees are a little wider than the bolster. And then I lower down the torso. So the torso, so arms stretch back in a baby back bend. Just use the positioning of moving down onto the bolster to help you come into this locust pose. Okay, so my arms are reaching to sides. You definitely could have them touching the sides of the legs. If you feel like, oh, I'm tired, this is a lot of my back strength, just bring your hands down, elbows by the sides, kind of squeeze into the sides of the body with the elbows. And then bring your elbows down completely into Sphinx pose and feel the chest arching. Yeah, how nice is that? It generally feels more rounding during the day, so just press into your elbows and arch. Now, if this is kind of exciting for you to feel in the chest area, you can always do this other times with like a couple blocks, right? You can put a block under your elbow and work on this arching and that strengthening. It's just something to add for your practice for back care. And so as I press through the elbows, and then as I come back to hands, knees, feel the back muscles scooping and rounding through the tail, cat pose. And then feel the arch, hips kind of sway back, chest forward. Exhale, cat pose. Inhale, arching. Last one, exhale, find that spine motion, curling cat. And then feel how you press down wide through the hands and arch. Okay, and now turn the bolster across again. If you were using the round one, bring that back in. And then lean into the hip. I'm happy with the standard one. This is just makes it easier to practice sometimes. But ball under the left inner knee, side sage, here we come. Sand on the left hip, probably you don't need to add any more props overhead, but you are using your blanket under your head. That's key. So my arm on that, the right arm, the lower arm, there's probably habits that you get into with these poses since you've done them for a while. So if that lower arm on this side is bending more, just notice, how can you, when you're practicing, feel where your shoulder touches the bolster. So I can feel my right rotator cuff, the lower rotator cuff, this area is kind of pushing into the bolster, which I like. And I'm actually trying to use the bolster to try to stretch it out, kind of nudge into it. I suppose we could put a ball there. I didn't think of that before, but maybe I'll study that a bit. But for now, we've got the right arm resting in the gap between the bolster and the blankets, and the left arm maybe goes overhead. Yeah, see if you can be casual with trying to find perfection with the leg parts here. So, the left leg going back is nice to get that stretch in the hip flexor and the quad. But is it really that deep of a quad stretch? And you can kind of go, well, it's a little more abdominal, it's psoas. So you want to find what's on the bolster to feel just as much of that reach. Okay, and so as the left arm either soars overhead, maybe it finds a place to touch, maybe it doesn't. You can just open to the left. You can certainly let your head roll on the blanket. I guess you have to be a little careful on this variation today because the blanket's lengthwise. You don't want to roll off the blanket with your head, huh? All right, so feature that reach and breathe. Now notice if the breath has gone from this expansion out, kind of horizontalish, to a blend of lengthening, right? Because we're going to place them both together, right? Everything's about kind of finding the lines of energy, and then we're going to kind of wrap around the rib cage in the twist. You know, those are some of the best shapes that you can do for making a lymphatic pump, right? Helping the lymph flow. So it doesn't like pool in certain areas. There's a whole thing we could talk about that, but in our practice, I like to vary out the science of the how we're moving through the region. So in other words, you don't have to overdo it. Just take the shape, trust the process, use the props so you are supported. You know, take breaks to hydrate. That's probably something we could add a little more in on this practice. Okay, maybe yoga do. All right, so feeling where the waist turns. All right, and then as you turn now, you know, mostly arms help you rotate on this one. You know, arms help twist a lot, aren't they nice? But what if you don't really have that ability to use one side, right? So you might want to just prepare here. So feel the turn with the ribs, drop the sand. I'm just going to drop mine on my right thigh and see what happens here. And as I come up, I move the ball from that left leg. I bring the left inner thigh to my right foot. And then I just flip my bolster up and then I lower down. It's really that easy, right? It's nice to find just easy versions of these sage poses. If the sand on the thigh feels like it's tightening your back, it could. Just get rid of it, okay? It might actually be a warmer, right? You can feel that when it's on that thigh, it's creating that kind of stretch. Relax your heart, your Velcro heart to the bolster. Probably the bolster flat is better than the round. I'm assuming the round bolster would be fine. Some of them are pretty flat anyway. But as you lower your head down, relax the heart. Feel the elbows flow out. Feel the arms reach. I see some people do this one with the arms down by the sides, palms open. Okay, you can find your way. It's not that different than like a child's pose. Some people think of this as like a pretend pigeon pose. It kind of warms up the hip for that, right? This is a good thing to do before pigeon. So feel the waist, feel the back of the waist. Relax your breath. Okay, now slide the hands in next to the bolster under the shoulders and push a little bit to come up, but find your way to move that sand away. Turn the face away from the bolster and move the bolster, or maybe you have to move the bolster first, huh? Off to the side yard. And you're going to need a belt. And since it's already unbuckled, maybe we won't worry about buckling it. That plan went away, I guess. Okay, so take a blanket underneath your head at the lowest. It's got to be like just inches at the most, really low. And if you do this without the blanket, my teacher would say that's better. So I like a little padding, little bit, itty bitty padding. Okay, so let's take our belt. We're going to be lying back. I just want you to just notice the belt's going to go to the shins. Okay, so it's going to be when you lie back and you pull on it, it might be hard to have the belt that low to your ankles. You're going to have to play with where the distribution is, and you could also have your feet apart on this one. Okay, so kind of imagine you have like a block at its most narrow setting between the feet. I'm tempted to try that and see how that would work. Okay, I'm going to just use the belt. This is what I've been taught. So if you want to put a block between your feet, go for it. But then you might not have as much free free play with the feet. Okay, so I got a belt. It's below the knees, that's for sure. It's at the shins. Okay, tibia time. Here we go. So I'm going to be pulling, and as I lift up my hips, I'm going to give myself a little slack here. So my hips go up to bridge, and my elbows are on the ground, but they don't have to be. Okay, this is taught frequently with the elbows up, so there's this massive resistance going on. So the knees are apart. Okay, and it's okay if they turn out a little bit. Right? If your feet turn out a little bit, don't get upset at yourself. They don't have to be perfectly parallel. But your ambition here is to feel the hips lift up, okay, and not hurt your knees. So if you're like, oh, this part of this knee that has issues is feeling a little tripped up, then you might not go as high with your hips. That's usually the message you get. But I want you to lift and lower now that we've been up there for a minute, and feel the parts of your back that are touched by this motion. Okay, so I feel kind of behind the heart and a little bit lower. And then when I get my hips to go up, it goes up towards my shoulders, which is so good. Bridge pose is for shoulders. That's one of the things it's for. So when I hold onto the belt, it's kind of firming up the strength in my bicep a little bit, right? It's mostly contracting those muscles. So as you lift the hips up and down, take a few moments here with that lifted bridge pose. Okay. All right. Now, since you're using the belt, I hope, okay, you may have done bridge pose with the hands clasping before. That's probably a common bridge teaching. Okay. But when we get to lift up this next time, try to get the shoulders to roll down and in towards the spine. I bet they're going to go halfway to what you were hoping they'd go, and they'll slide back out. There's just always further to go. Part of it is the bulk under your head, right? If you have a lot of blanket, not going to be easy for you to get flexible there. So a little blanket or no blanket would be good, right? Now with your glutes so toned now, okay? Can't feel those glutes stronger than this one. We're going to pull, so there's resistance. And then just let the spine lower down. And it feels like it's one mass of a back that lowers down, not like each little piece. You can feel it going downwards, just fully in a board. Okay, strength, and then bring your knees to your chest. Take the belt to your feet, lift them up, and then pull. Keep the feet together so that the back is not getting some mixed messages. What's going on with me? You're pulling, and your hands could be, you could walk them up towards the feet. I like to do this one with my elbows resting on the ground. So not a big deal. Just feel the pull. And then before you know it, your legs swing a little bit back so the back gets more stretch. Okay. Now bend your knees, take your belt off, and take a soft therapy ball. If you don't have a therapy ball, I suppose you could use a tune-up ball or a tennis ball. That would be okay. So we're going to first start, we're going to move it to the left rear. I like this tactic of I swing my knees over, okay? And then when I lean back to the ball, I have to put my feet down, otherwise I'll just keep rolling. And then I don't kind of jam up my glutes to get the ball under for the glutes to have that massage. So again, you might have your knees to the side, just put the ball to your rear, and then lean over to the left, and it'll be awkward, but you'll get up on the ball. Okay, so move the ball to a spot where you feel like, okay, I want to massage that area. I want to get some circulation in those tissues. This is one really good way to work on the movement of lymph in the body too, is through massage, right? So one way we do that in this class that's effective is with the movement in the tighter area of our hips. Our hip, connecting to our hip is a glute. So swipe across, all the way across the muscles at the rear towards the border. And yeah, just keep going with it for a few moments. If it's a little bit confusing with the movement, you might lock into a place where it feels like it just feels good to rub into it. You don't know if it's a knot or not. It's knotted up, but it feels good to kind of jostle those tissues. And the ball is a really responsive surface. Right. Now, As you come back to center, take the ball out from the left side, swing the knees over to the left side, ball to the right, and then get up on the ball. Now that works so-so, I have to admit. Some days it works better if my feet are on a bolster to do that one, but I'll just get the ball in a good spot. So as you're rolling, remember you have the ball, so it's at the glute, right, at the glute maximus. So you're trying to go over to the border. You're not going to have the ball here on the side of the thigh, and you don't want it too low on the rear because it doesn't even have that much of a nerve-rich sensation. It doesn't even feel like it's helpful, does it? So you want to find it right where it's at that magic circulation zone. That's going to connect to the root of your, kind of towards the hip socket, right where the thigh bone lands into it. I know, amazing. We're kind of pushing into that area. And you want your body to be, mobile and tone and resistance, resilience. I mean, that's a part of this whole thing with our femur and our hip, and, feel a little bit of weight, pressure when you push into your feet and go across. Okay. So now when we go back towards center line, and you can keep rolling. No one's going to force you to get out of this direction if you want to keep massaging the glute. But let's take a feel here. Now that the right area's got a little touch right now, I feel a little heat on the right side. I'm going to lower back down and then take my left leg and cross it over the right leg. And the knees are going to go left. And it might be a little vulnerable for you right now when you kind of swing them over. So what you could do is put a block under the left thigh, or you could put the ball over there. So if you decide you want to use the ball under that left leg, add that. Yeah, I kind of like the ball. Doesn't feel purposeful on my right side. So I'm going to put on the left. If that's too much of a drop for you with the stretch, you can put a block, so because it's higher, and you can change the setting on the block easily. But feeling where the legs are wrapped. Now this is basically eagle pose on your back. If you used to do eagle pose, right? You'd wrap your arm and your leg. You'd stand on one foot, and it would be a little harmful on the knee if you were standing on the foot. Okay. So now we have the knee curving. We're not putting force or pushing the knee over the toes or anything. So that the waist stretches. If you stand and do this, you don't really feel this stretching the same. I feel it all the way to my T-band on the right leg. Come back up center and then uncross. Take the other leg over the left thigh. Bring the knees to the right. So if you're confused, you're just crossing the leg. Okay. And again, it's similar to eagle pose, right? So if you remember back, we used to do, I don't think this restorative group did this, but we'd cross the leg over. Remember these? You'd wrap the leg around. So it's virtually the same thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe you think it's different, but I mean, I could wrap my arms around too, but I'm good. I don't need to do that. If you need more blanket, you can fold it up, but make sure it's not under your neck or your shoulders. So kind of get a feel for this reach now through lower abdominals, right? This movement to the side of the hip and then shifting down to the IT band. And maybe we're breathing too. That would be a bonus. Some bonus breaths. Feel that cycle of in and out breath. And now come back into center. All right, and then I want you to hug your knees into your chest. No ball needed. Okay, that goes off to the side. Hug the knees in. Now this could still be knees hugging in with my hands holding the backs of the legs. Doesn't need to be my knees. So, you might try both. I feel like I'm now to the variety of holding the back of the legs, and also connecting to these zones of circulation. You can kind of squeeze the back of the leg up towards the back of the knee and feel the circulation there. It's kind of wicked. It's really interesting how it kind of tightens up and supports. I mean, this is an important area that has a lot of supports and wiring around it, and ligaments, tendons. It's a nutso experience to be there, I'm sure. But when I squeeze in, you can feel how your back is rounding. It's flexing. So I want you just to rock a little side to side on the back of the pelvis. Kind of imagine if you had the ball center of the knees, but let's not add it right now. Just rock on the back of the pelvis. Okay. And then you're going to roll to a side. We'll make it easier for our back right now. Roll and then come around to hands, knees, and let's have our blocks nearby. In fact, let's put them over to the right side. I'm putting mine out of view so they're not distracting you, but you can have them just to the right side of your mat. They can be besides your knee on that side. So hands under shoulders, feet reaching back, find the wall, right? If you got a wall space. And then I want you to get a feel of the arch of the spine, so the chest forwards. I notice that's kind of limited for some of us, right? Just the movement of the chest this way is sometimes challenged. And then as you come back, you're going to lift up the knees and try to press back in towards the heels, up a little bit at the wall to make it easier. Now, if this is like, oh gosh, my wrists are not okay with this whatsoever, step one would be use a block under each hand. Okay, now if you know that's not going to be quality for you and it will be chaos for you, I love blocks under my hands for dog pose, but you can also bring your elbows down and hands together or palms down, lift the hips up. But take a few moments where you're organizing the reverse flow into the organs, right? The pelvis is lifting and the organs are not in prolapse. So just that fact right now is all we're focusing on, just that reverse flow to the brain. Okay, now start to move your feet a little bit away from the wall and walk your hands on back to your feet and use the wall for your rear just to touch a little bit into, right? You don't want to get too close to the wall with your heels because you'll take a somersault. But if you're just the right distancing to ease the sensation in the backs of the legs, pour it out, right? You can have your hands holding the legs. They can touch the wall. I really like this version. If I have a wall, I'll push a little into it. And wake up the hamstrings. And then as you bend your knees a little bit, you can either let your arms stretch forward or back to the wall and come on up. And then we're going to do L shape. So we're going to turn to a wall and you're going to push your hands into it and you're going to bend the knees as you walk your feet back. I would say always bend the knees here. And then you can stretch your spine more with the knees. Well, if the knees bend, it'll feel like a greater amount of extension. Okay. Now your feet have some separation. Feel what it's like if they turn a little bit out or if they're back to parallel. Move your hips a little side to side, wag your tail. Okay, and as you feel the arms reaching, the shoulder stretching. Yeah, this can be either like, I just love this for my shoulders, or I don't know what to say, but I don't like it. Okay, so if you're like, I don't like it, walk your hands up a little bit on the wall, a little higher. So you feel like, well, this is a little like down dog, right? Okay, so the hands can go up the wall, they can go down, right straight from the shoulders, but bend the knees, right? That will be your help. Okay. I love L shape. This is a good one. Okay, now continue on through the back stretch. So you're going to just push into your hands, walk your hands up the wall a little bit, less wrist pressure. Bring your right foot to the wall, and you're going to turn to the left, or you could turn any direction you want, really. If you have a new direction besides right or left, let us know. All right, so have a wide stance. My right foot's against the wall, and I'm going to go into a forward fold. You can feel that the knees are going to be like, oh, do I go out or go in? So have a little bend so that you can feel the hinge at your hips. Try to stretch out from your pelvis versus rounding your back, which is pretty normal. And most of the time I'll walk around and people are just really going forward and down in the back. So bend your knees, feel this hinge at the hips, use your blocks under your hands, And then now you can maybe go downwards a little bit, lowering your hands. Of course, they're already on the blocks, but lowering your head. So as you lower down the spine in the opposite direction of its lifetime, right? Yeah, spend more time upside down. All right, I would say that's a good thing. So my hands could be here, and if I'm kind of tired of the hand gesture here, I might just hold my ankles. And if you want to, you certainly could do more of an inversion if you're far enough down with your head. So if you want, you can let your hands relax and try to bring the crown of your head to a block. Okay, that would be a benefit for circulation to the brain. But of course, it's okay if you simply hold your elbows and come all the way to elephant swing, or I like to call this one drinking giraffe. Okay, so elbows, you know, the legs might be wondering how important they are. Do I have to keep pulling on them? So try to work on that hinge at the hips. You can bring your hands up to your hips. You can bring your hands behind you to your sacrum and just kind of feel, how does this hinge here? You've been in this body for a while, but this hinge thing is a big deal for back care. Use the hips. Okay, now we're gonna bring our hands down on blocks or no blocks. And guess what? We're gonna try to get a bolster into the mix here. So walk on over to the left foot, and if your bolster is across the room, you might have to take a field trip and get it or reach around to find it. Place your bolster under that left leg, okay? You want to be distant enough from the wall that you don't kick it. And we're going to lower the back knee down. If you need a blankie, place it under the right knee. Don't worry, we're not going to be pushing into the knee a lot. Walk the left foot over to the right side of the mat and come into pigeon pose. Yeah, and if you're like, I kind of need a blankie under my knee, yeah, get out of the pose, right? You can always just swing the right leg forward, get a blanket, fold it, put it behind, and that may be just what you need, is a little more padding. Okay, nothing wrong with padding. So elbows down on some height might be the best thing for our back. We tend to do this one in sleeping pigeon where we just drop it, okay? But our back can always use that strengthening all the way up through the spine. So if I lift my chin up, even for about maybe 30 seconds in the pose, and then you can come down to your forehead on your hands if you like. Okay. If you need a modification out of this one, this is not working for you today, or no days, okay? Just come around to sitting and place your left foot on top of a block at the lowest setting. Okay, you can put a block under the right knee or a ball. So you're in basically a cross-legged pose and you're leaning forward. Okay, I like this one a lot. In fact, this is a good one just to hang out and do, right? Just sit on your bolster, put your foot on a block and just massage your calves, right? Doing some little work just below the knee is a good thing to do. So I think this is a good homework one for the hip, for the ankle, for our alignment, right out of our hip socket up into our back. Those of you that are going all the way into sleeping pigeon, remember you can bring your forehead down and use that bolster to kind of feel that squeeze into the groins. If it feels like the groins have the squeeze, it's okay, right? That's our goal here. Right, that's the massage right through those lymphy spots, right? Lower or leg pits. Okay, now come on around. If you're in the seated foot on a block version, you don't have to do that much, but you might find when you shift your pigeon pose, you can always stop in the middle and do a cobbler's pose, right? Just feel the soles of the feet close together, the knees out. Do a little cobbler contemplation. And then come into the other side. So right knee forward, I believe, left leg back, hands on blocks if you like, or maybe you feel like, no, I want to go all the way down on the forearms for a bit and then rest on your hands. Okay. So those of you that are maybe still in your cobbler, remember you can have your soles of your feet as close as they're comfy, hands on ankles leaning. And then those of us that are in foot on a block, right foot goes up. Yeah, I haven't seen this taught with like stacking blocks, except for if you're in the time of your yoga life where you try to put your foot behind your head or something and you just stack them and you try to scoop it under. But for now, this is the best method here for helping out my hip, right? Because I don't want to round my spine like that anyhow. So as I hold on, right, and the seated foot on the block, I like to call this one hip juicer. So when I lean forward, I reach through my torso. My hands could be back on the bolster. And breathe. Yeah. Take a few moments. Those of us in pigeon, we are forward leaners, right? We're reaching with the waist down. Breathing. Now feel where the forearms, or the two arms, press so that you're not pushing into your wrists, those of us in pigeon, right? See if you can feel where the elbows press and a connection up into the shoulders. Okay, and then walk your hands back towards the legs. Even if you're a foot on the block, you're going to come around to take a seat with your flat bolster, right? We're on the flats. And we're going to move our bolster back close to a wall. So uncross through the legs, move back so you can touch a wall, okay? Or a chair. If you don't have a wall space, a chair, I think a stool, it depends on the height of your stool. I mean, that might work. But you want something you can reach to that's not gonna fall over. Okay, so let's take a moment here. You just have to touch the wall. It doesn't have to be like you can hit it with your elbow. In fact, that probably isn't going to be helpful. If you get too close to the wall, your shoulder's going to get overstretched or stressed, I could say. Your shoulders will get overstressed. So let's take a position when we're facing away. So you know if your bolster is across, horizontal, your alignment's so-so. It's like, you kind of got a pretty good idea where you're going. Back to the ball behind you. Okay, or a chair. Now, get your sand. If you have a sandbag, place it on right thigh. We're going to try to stay forward for a few moments with our navel forward away from the wall. So my leg direction is left leg has a reach out, right leg kind of reaches out and down. So it's like kind of like a 10 and 2-ish kind of a feel here for me with my leg parts. Okay. I put a ball under my left knee. I just feel like that's like super good for my knee joint. Okay. Or the back of it. So my right foot's pretty passive. I'm not trying to focus on a pure flex. I'm just going to let the knees rest so my hips can warm up. And then I'm going to lean a little forward. Okay. My hands can reach back, interlace my fingers, stretch the chest. This is unlikely the easiest thing for most people to do, so you might have to use a belt. I think the belt works really good so that I can actually feel like this open. See, if I hold on with my hands, it's probably 3/4 of the way that I get with my belt. Pretty sure. Okay. Now, feeling where the heart ascends, as far as you can tell, it's going a little bit up. It's not dropping. It's either neutral or it's up. Breathe. Relax the jaw. Okay, now let go of the belt if you're using that. Bring your right hand to the right hip, so the back of the hip. So you're feeling from your QL area. So you can kind of feel that space from the SI joint close to your right hip. And you're going to bring the left hand over to the right knee. So door number 1 would be my hand stays on my back. Okay. Door 2 is I get the wall with my right hand and I bend the elbow. So it might be important for some of us that are feeling like our shoulders don't really like this is to get the elbow to bend, okay? Not to try to strike this press with the hand and then try to rotate. Feel the right elbow bending and feel the rib cage turn, right? So the hand can turn, right? It's like pretty cool. You know, your hand is a dynamic of movement, your wrist. It's all has separations, right? But then your focus is that inner lift. So left hand holds the right knee or above the knee if you don't like holding your knee. Okay, right foot could touch towards the left, the ball that's under my left knee. That's like great. I love that. So breathe. Okay, now keeping that right hand connection behind you, left hand reaches to the right leg, bend the elbow, and then stretch the right arm up. First, feel the rib cage stretch up, and then stretch the right arm over. Now, just over to the side of your face. It doesn't need to go all the way down to the leg or anything, but feeling right before the neck gets a little tightened up there, or maybe it's after you go, uh-oh, arm goes open. But feel that sense of connection all the way down to where the sand is. If your leg is bouncing up, this is a thing, right? The leg might lift up. So I'm trying to keep that leg down. Come on, leg, don't go back up. So what helps with that sometimes is a block under the legs. You have something to push to. Okay, now right arm lowers down. Roll the shoulders and spend some good energy on rolling the shoulders up and around to the back. Even if they're crunchy sounding. Crunchy shoulders. Okay. Let your head tilt to the left and right, side to side. Feel just the right amount of stretch to your neck. Don't go too fast, right? If you go swinging over to the other side, the neck might get tighter. Okay, now come back through center. Let the right leg stretch out. Left leg draws in, not a big difference, but the sand's got to go over to the other side. Okay, so when I move it over, I think what I learned last side is I probably need a block under my knee. Okay, on the left knee for me this side. So it's up to you. If you use that block and you find that support, and you know, this is apparently a hip opener. So sometimes you feel like this is all like my ribs, my shoulders, my spine. But if I have my knees this direction, it's opening my hips. It's like hip 101, right? Adductors. Okay. So you can always use this ball under the right knee to help you move out with the leg. It's like, oh, it's kind of neat. I think last time what I liked was having my left foot touch to that ball that was under my right knee. It was like, that was kind of a bit of an epiphany for me on that in that pose, but okay, I can use those. So arms back. If I got a belt back there, I'm going to hold it and open up through the shoulder vine and moving the shoulders maybe up and back and around. So up, roll, and down. Okay. So if you get kind of hyper tone with the neck, like you try to push your jaw up and like be a better poser or something, see if you can just kind of just slide the shoulders back. Just feel like it's a basic heart opener. It doesn't need to be more than that. Like finding your center. Okay, now we start to move to the left. So we're going to bring the right hand to the left knee. I think what's a little tricky is this leg stuff. So when I reach back to the wall with the left hand, I have these areas that I'm trying to stay steady. My right leg is out, my left knee is out, my torso twists. So this lower area is arching, right? My back is arching. So you can even put your knuckles to that low back and say, please arch, and then let the ribs lift, and left hand back. I mean, maybe this side's tighter. I mean, who knows? Maybe you're like, I can't go this far. Yeah, meet yourself where you are. I mean, what's the point of trying to force it? So some of us, maybe one side, maybe your knee is angled further to the side, so it feels like you get further. But just find where you're at. Let the hand kind of spider the hand, fingers stretch out. It could be the pads of the fingers that you turn a little to the left. But guess what? It's the shoulder you're trying to work. Bend the elbow. That's key. Lift up at the heart. You can flex your right foot. You don't have to. And it's your experience. And if parts of the body, I mean, you have different organs on each side, so they're not exactly the same. But, you know, you might find that when you push towards the left side, what, spleen, stomach, pancreas, right? You might find when you breathe, you might be a little more gaspy on one side. It could be. So as you start to come into this side stretch, you're going to bring your right arm down to the right leg. Left arm comes up from the wall. It's kind of a relief. The fizzle of sensation in the muscles is like, whew, kind of pours down into the armpit, which is just what we want for our lymph pump, right? We want this arm to go up. Feel this heat in the shoulder, the armpit, hooray. The left arm could go behind your back. All right, you still get points. You lean and breathe. Okay. This time, let's just turn the heart away from the wall and come back center. Bring your hands to rest on your thighs and just let your shoulders roll back. Okay. So as we start to shift our bones off the bolster, I want you just to find your line, find from sitting bones, central, up towards the heart. Breathe in. Belly soft. Exhale. Okay, so feel if you can breathe without like dropping the ribs, right? So when we take the sand away, you're going to take it on over, and then you're going to carefully try to stay in a bit of this space of arch, even though you're going to go onto your back. Okay, you're going to come around off your bolster, and let's take the bolster to the right side of our mat if we're looking at the wall. So you're going to turn around so that your bolster is on the right side, and probably a flat bolster is better. And let's lower back on one blanket, just in a quarter fold. This one you're going to want to have a little bulk with it. I don't think you want it too low because you want to feel the support of your back arching. So when I lower down, I'm not too close to the wall, but you know, you might like the wall under your feet. You might like that feedback. Okay, bolster right leg bend, left leg carefully swings over to the right. Okay, so kind of feel how you move out of the hip, right? How do you move out of the pelvis? How do you swing? Okay, so yeah, reclining twists are, this is a revolved core pose, revolved abdomen is what we like to call this in the series work. So I like to say revolved core because it just seems like it's so many areas besides abdomen, but we think of abdomen because we're working on the organs, the movement there. So if you have a sandbag, you can add it in many areas. I mean, you could have it on hip. That seems like the regular spot for a sandbag. If it feels like, oh, it's just so heavy right now, you might place it on the area that can use that grounding, right? Weight bearing in the hip area. And some people like to put it up on the arm. Just be a little careful slinging a sandbag on your arm. Just caution. And be sure the left elbow is a little bendy, right? Just like when you do seated cross-legged poses, right? And it's not exactly the same joint, but in some way there's similarities, right? So if my arm opens out, just like when my knees open out in a seated pose, you want to feel the elbow bend, and you're trying to get that. It doesn't feel quite the same flesh-like, but it is still flesh. You're trying to get that to rotate open. Yeah. That might be kind of a nice thing for you, just to relax your left arm out. Right hand can rest on your breathing muscles or on the floor. Yeah, thank the floor for being there for your practice. Right knee is in a bend, right? It helps the spine be supported. Kind of, if your right leg was straight, you might feel a little wonky with your balance. And then relate to that belly motion with breath. Like breathe everywhere, right? It doesn't have to be like this perfect breath sequence in one zone. It's encourage that spread of movement in the body with the breath. Now let your head roll back to center. Move the sand off the hip or anywhere that it's at. And when you prep to move to center, think first, I got to go to the center first. So take the ball out if you have that. Bring your knees up to center into constructive rest so they rest together. And then we get ready to go to that second side, not shocking the sacrum. So I just have my pelvis. It does have a feeling of like a width here, right? So it's kind of reaching out to the back of the pelvis, triangular area in that space that we're emphasizing. And then we move the bolster left. And you might have to scooch your hips over to the right. So you have enough room for your left leg to bend and then swing the right leg over. Give yourself some freedom. Now, one thing I remember from dance learning in college was that we did like the swing work with the knees out to the side. So you can always play with this kind of stuff. Be on your back, kind of roll a little bit to one shoulder and the other, but what's not touching down all the time is the pelvis one. So you can play with kind of how do you get this range of motion in your hips. Okay, so it doesn't have to be just like these poses. It does kind of shrink our options, I think. Like this is the one for this hip part. So movement is fine, right? If you want to stay supine, your back on the ground, chest open, let the legs gently kind of swing, do some sensing practice, go for it. Okay. And that might kind of just get some nice motion in the tissues before they're held in a pose, okay? Before they get held up in a pose and get sanded and told to stay. So sand on maybe, right arm open. Things get in the way besides you, I'm sure. And then again, remember elbow bending. You know, it's likely one side, the whole elbow bend thing seems easier than the other. You know, it could be collarbone differences with your flexibility at the front, upper ribs. Yeah, it's that inner world. If you were to like see how different it is from side to side, you might be signing up for something to figure that out. How do I get that balance? But for now, we're feeling from the inside with the breath. And then feel where the twist is through the hip, the arch in the spine, and the openness through the ribs. And the belly doesn't have to feel the response of the arch or any of the bones and the muscles. The belly can just gently move with the sway of the breath. Kind of nice to feel connected to the organs with just massaging that core with how you stimulate movement from breath. Now head might roll to the right or might stay center. Start to check in with the kind of the volume in the heart, right? That's where we're going to be returning the blood back to in the last pose. So just noticing if that feels pretty serene, because we want it to be in a calm sensation, right? And it'll get calmer, right, with the feet up, but just kind of set it up, set the foundation. Since we generally feel our foundation is our feet most of the day, so we want our end to be kind of the foundation is that pool of circulation to the belly and heart and the throat. Okay, now as we move the props off of our hip, shoulder, if you have them on the chest or shoulder, and that ball, right, that goes away. And then just with ease, you're going to roll left, use your arms to gently slide you back to your hip. And then grab a blanket so it's close to the wall. If you're not going to participate with legs up the wall, you could do legs up a chair, legs up on a bolster bench, or you could have legs up the wall with a blanket here instead of a bolster. It works really good. Right? You don't have to have a bolster. The idea is having some height so it is the energetics of inversion, so the pelvis is elevated. If you can think of it, kind of the sacral area, the cranial area has lift. You know, there's plenty of ideas you can branch into it that are cool theories of why we're doing it. But the basic point is we get close to the wall with our bolster or blanket under our seat. We try to get our sitting bones close. And some of you are already up, say down, you just roll on up. Yep, practice makes it easier, almost guaranteed. Blanket, I like a good amount of padding for just that cranial rhythm support. I don't want it to be so bulky my chin is in my chest, right? That's not appropriate. If you have congestion, this would probably be a really tough pose, right? If you're not, it's like, do this, okay? Help yourself to plenty of inversions. Get a good helping. Okay, take a sandbag. Place it on either. Some people like the sand on their core, right? They just like it here. I like the sand on my feet, okay? I think this is good medicine, right, for the heart. To get the sand on my feet, because the heart's got to work pretty hard to get the blood down to bring it back up. Bring it down and back, the whole cycle. So we want to focus also on the throat area, the metabolic center. So you want that to relax. So you might do subtle movements of your head, not like a big rock and roll, but just feel where the support is under your head, right at the good spot, at the maybe right at the shelf at the back of your head. You can kind of feel that. Okay, and then the arms could rest out. If you're a little cool, get some layers on. If you have that extra blanket nearby, you can put it on your torso and your eye pillow, of course. But as we center back, feel where there's separation at the feet and how that flows down. And even though there's separation, right, this is quite an inner unity pose, right, for the belly organs. Kind of pulls it all in this gravitational pull back towards the heart and the brain. So spending some time, your hands could be wherever it's comfortable. They could be out to the sides in goalpost, straight reach behind you or down below the heart level, or resting on the breathing sensations. And is there any way you can soften the face? Relax the mouth, the jaw. And bring some toning into the organs with the breath. We're just feeling its supple movement in that core. Like you're trying to get that area more flexible with the breathing wave. Finally let the heart have its kind of final peace. It doesn't get this very often, right? All that reverse flow back to it so it can relax. Take a break. So if you feel you want to be in this inversion a little longer, you certainly can. Just be aware that the tailbone connection is important too. So it doesn't need to be a deep press of the tailbone. I think some teachings it is, but when you're kind of at the end of it, you might find that with the sand, it's hard to press tailbone down. So as I move my feet off of against the wall, I bend the knees, and then as I move the sand, you can toss it, right? You might feel again, oh, I can feel the tailbone press different with the sand off of the feet. So you can kind of play with that assortment. And what's interesting about that is when you stand around during the day, you clearly are pushing weight in your feet to walk around. So, just connect to that on other times when you're standing upright. How do you move in your tailbone? You want to arch. So bend through the legs, hold the backs of the legs if you're coming out of the pose. If you're going to stay, you just simply stay. Rock a little side to side. And feeling where the leg bones touch to the body, right, where it massages into the body. And then as we roll to the side, if you don't like rolling to the side to come out, you can slide back away from the wall. Okay, I want you to know there's other ways to come away from that one. Okay, come around to take a seat when you're ready. Find the way into your sitting zone. That doesn't need to be bones close together. It could be you hold the thighs, you kind of move them a little bit out. So you have a nice platform for liftoff. And then hands guide to your heart, palm to palm, uniting our breath in. And with exhale, bowing into that space behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste.